From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
Can you imagine a mother without her oldest child? It would be different if I knew my child was deceased. I could accept that. It would hurt. But that's a part of life. But to take him like they did and to throw him away, oh no.
A living death. Over 3,000 prisoners in the United States are serving sentences of life without parole for nonviolent offenses. One was jailed for life for shoplifting cameras from Walmart, another for stealing a $159 jacket, and another for serving as a middleman in the sale of $10 of marijuana. We'll speak with the author of the new ACLU report. Then one of Latin America's most popular musical acts, Calle 13, teams up with WikiLeaks' Julian Assange for a new song.
We live in the world of your propaganda maze. But where you think you are strong, you are weak. Your lies tell us the truth we will use against you. Your secrecy shows us where we will strike. Your weapons reveal your fear for all to see. From Cairo to Quito, a new world is forming. The power of people armed with the truth.
8 years ago, Calle 13, or Calle 13, made headlines when it recorded the song Dear FBI, after FBI agents shot dead Puerto Rican independence leader Filiberto Ojeda Rios. The band has gone on to win a record 19 Latin Grammys. The group's co-founder, Renee Perez, a.k.a. Residente, joins us today in studio. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Obama's reversed part of his signature health care law, allowing people to temporarily remain on plans that do not meet minimum standards. Obama made the change in response to mounting pressure after some consumers received cancellation notices despite vows they could keep their plans.
The line is insurers can extend current plans that would otherwise be canceled into 2014, and Americans whose plans have been canceled can choose to re-enroll in the same kind of plan.
During his address, President Obama admitted his administration had fumbled the rollout of the new law. The impact of the latest change remains unclear, since insurance firms and state officials still may not allow people to keep the old policies. Obama has called on Congress to hold off on new sanctions against Iran as he and other world leaders attempt to reach a deal on Iran's nuclear program. Lawmakers from both parties have vowed to move ahead with a measure targeting Iranian oil exports, despite progress in recent talks. On Thursday, Obama asked Congress to wait.
If we're serious about pursuing diplomacy, then there's no need for us to add new sanctions on top of the sanctions that are already very effective and that brought them to the table in the first place. Now, if it turns out they can't deliver, they can't come to the table in a serious way and get this issue resolved, the sanctions can be ramped back up. And we've got that option.
A United Nations inspection report showed Thursday that Iran has largely put the brakes on its nuclear expansion since President Hassan Rouhani was elected in the summer. Talks between Iran, the U.S., and 5 other world powers are due to resume in Geneva next week. In Iraq, a series of explosions aimed at Shiite worshippers killed at least 41 people and injured more than 100 Thursday. The attacks targeted Shiites observing the religious ritual of Ashura. Violence in Iraq is currently at its highest level since 2008. Janet Yellen, Obama's nominee to head the Federal Reserve, faced questions at a Senate confirmation hearing Thursday. Yellen's been the Fed's vice chair since 2010. She defended the Fed's economic stimulus program, praised outgoing Chair Ben Bernanke, and responded to questions from Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren about the failure to regulate big banks.
Do you think that the Fed's lack of attention to regulatory and supervisory responsibilities helped lead to the crash of 2008?
You know, I think in the aftermath of the crisis, we've gone back and tried to look carefully at what we should have done differently, and there have been important lessons learned.
A federal judge in Manhattan who oversaw a recent fraud trial against Bank of America has criticized the Obama administration for failing to prosecute a single high-level executive over the financial crisis. In a speech this week, Judge Jed Rakoff honed in on Attorney General Eric Holder's statement that it's difficult to prosecute banks when it seems doing so could hurt the economy. Judge Rakoff said, quote, "To a federal judge who takes an oath to apply the law equally to rich and poor, this excuse, sometimes labeled the too-big-to-jail excuse, is disturbing, frankly, in what it says about the department's apparent disregard for equality under the law," he said. Judge Rakoff noted Holder was referring to the prosecution of institutions, adding when it comes to prosecuting CEOs, quote, "the excuse becomes entirely irrelevant." Last week, New York Federal Reserve President William Dudley also criticized the big banks, saying some have a, quote, "apparent lack of respect for law, regulation, and the public trust." In the latest potential financial scandal, the United States is investigating the actions of a group of traders at the world's largest banks. Nicknamed the Cartel, the traders allegedly shared information in online chat rooms in a bid to manipulate the price of foreign currencies. Attorney General Eric Holder told the New York Times, quote, "The manipulation we've seen so far may be just the tip of the iceberg." A former FBI agent has been sentenced to 3.5 years in prison for leaking secret information about a U.S. operation in Yemen, which was published in an Associated Press report. The AP story sparked the mass collection of reporters' phone records by the Obama administration in what the outlet's president called a massive and unprecedented intrusion. The leaker, Donald Sachtleben, was also sentenced to an additional 8 years in prison for unrelated child pornography charges. The second international drone summit's taking place this weekend in Washington, D.C. Relatives of those killed by U.S. drones in Pakistan and Yemen are gathering with drone critics from Code Pink and other organizations. Among those traveling from Yemen is Faisal bin Ali Jaber, an engineer whose nephew and brother-in-law were killed in a drone strike. In a letter to President Obama, Jaber said his nephew was a policeman while his brother-in-law was an imam who preached against al-Qaeda. He wrote, quote, "In his death, you lost a potential ally. In fact, because word of the killing spread immediately through the region, I fear you have lost thousands." A new report finds New York City Police Department's controversial stop-and-frisk policy has yielded a conviction rate of just 3%. The report by New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman reviewed 2.4 million stops between 2009 and 12. Overall, just 0.1% of those stops resulted in a conviction for a violent crime. U.S. District Judge Shira Shinlin ruled stop-and-frisk unconstitutional in August, but an appeals court stayed the ruling last month and actually removed her from the case. Newly elected Mayor Bill de Blasio has vowed to drop the city's appeal of the judge's ruling. The Philippines government says the death toll from Typhoon Haiyan has risen to 3,621 people. The United Nations initially said Thursday more than 4,000 have died, but later said it was reviewing that number. The precise toll is still unclear as decomposing corpses remain on the streets. In Tacloban on Thursday, scores of bodies were buried in a mass grave. A disaster official said the move was temporary.
Right now, what we're doing is this a temporary, collective mass grave. It is temporary because for all the cadavers here, at the meantime, it needs to be buried, to give them a decent burial and to give them dignity to the dead. It's a temporary burial for future identification process.
In the latest potent sign of global warming, an Antarctic iceberg the size of Singapore is heading out to sea after breaking off from a glacier in July. The iceberg could disrupt international shipping. New figures show this year is on pace to be among the 10th warmest ever since record-keeping began. Jeremiah Lenguasa of the World Meteorological Organization discussed the findings on the sidelines of the UN Climate Summit in Warsaw, Poland. He said a warming planet is fueling extreme weather.
The year 2013 is already on course to be among the top 10 warmest years since modern recordings began in 1850. We cannot at this stage attribute a single typhoon to climate change. What we do know, of course, is that climate change affects sea level and sea level rise. Secondly, climate change affects ocean surface temperatures. In this context, as you would know, these storms are fueled by warmer oceans over which they form and over which they pass.
Democracy Now! Will be broadcasting live all next week from Warsaw, Poland, covering the UN Climate Change Summit known as COP19. While the summit continued in Warsaw Thursday, a village in western Poland was rocked by a gas pipeline explosion that ignited homes and killed at least 2 people. At least 13 others were injured. One witness said she thought the world was ending. Another gas pipeline explosion Thursday in North Texas prompted the evacuation of an entire town. Officials say workers accidentally drilled into the Chevron pipeline near the town of Milford. There were no reports of injuries. An enormous plume of black smoke and flames could be seen 4 miles. Voters in the city of Broomfield, Colorado, have approved a ban on the controversial natural gas fracking technique known as fracking. Initial results showed the ban had failed, but officials now say it passed by 17 votes. All 4 Colorado cities with fracking bans on the November ballot have now approved them. Prosecutors in Michigan are expected to announce today whether they will charge a white man who shot an unarmed African-American woman on his porch. Family members say 19-year-old Renisha McBride was seeking help after a car crash when she was killed by a shotgun blast to the face. A toxicology report released Thursday showed McBride had a blood alcohol level of twice the legal limit to drive. But supporters say the results are irrelevant. They've called for toxicology results on the shooter who claimed his gun accidentally fired at McBride. Activist Jeremy Hammond is facing sentencing today after pleading guilty to a role in hacking the private intelligence firm Stratfor. Emails from Stratfor's servers published by WikiLeaks showed the firm engaged in widespread spying on activists on behalf of corporations. Hammond faces up to 10 years in prison. He's already spent 18 months behind bars, some of it in solitary confinement. And socialist candidate Kshama Sawant has won a seat on Seattle's City Council. Sawant is an economics professor who participated in the Occupy Wall Street movement. She's the first socialist candidate to win citywide office in Seattle in a century. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.